Hello, welcome back to ECE 101. We are now in week 2 of our course. As usual, our time really flies by, so be sure and keep up with your assignments and your discussion board postings. This week, you may have noticed we are in Chapter 1 of the Developmental Profiles e-text. We've hopped back into this e-text, so I wanted everyone to be aware of that, so you're not trying to find this content in your Intro to ECE textbook. Be sure to have the right e-text up. And also, I've been grading Pinterest assignments. They look fantastic. So if you're not getting those Pinterest points, be sure and contact me and go to Pinterest and make sure you're following me as well. It's under Shani Snell Instructor. Okay? Let's talk just a little bit about week 4. I always like to look ahead in a course so you know what to expect. In week 4, we'll be doing a final paper in place of a final exam or final project. This is a requirement of our online courses that at some point we do a research paper, so this will fulfill that. For this course, we're looking at several different early childhood theorists. So for this paper, I would like for you to choose one specific theorist. Here's a list of several different ones you might choose from: Erik Erikson, Jean Piaget, B.F. Skinner, Sigmund Freud. These are just a few that are addressed in our textbook. However, if you have a different theorist that you're interested in, maybe a more contemporary one, that would be fine. Just be sure and send me an email with the name of the theorist and get it okayed first before you get started. With this paper, you should be coming up with approximately 1,000 words in your paper, and that's equivalent to about 2 to 3 pages. So this isn't a huge research project, but it's long enough that you really do need to take some time on the specific questions that need to be addressed and do a little research, a little more in depth into the theorists that you choose. There's amazing things out there on the internet, but also you could use our library on My Course Connection and use the research function that's available to you as a student. Okay, so there's lots of resources. So there's 4 basic questions I'd like for you to answer in your paper. Number 1, what is the specific theorist and their theory? So I want you to provide the key points to their research and what they developed. Now, sometimes theorists will have more than one theory. So if you like to address their main one, their superstar theory, that would be great. If not, you can bring up several different ones as well. Number 2, what was his or her background? So you're providing some background information on this theorist. Some examples of this might be: where were they born? What type of family were they born into? How were they raised? Where did they go to college? What was their college major? Because sometimes it has nothing to do with education or philosophy or psychology. Sometimes they've come from a completely different area. So do a little research, find some interesting things out about your theorist. Number 3, which theory or theorist is similar to the one you've chosen to research, and in what ways are they similar? Then, in what ways are they different? So an example of this might be, let's say you've chosen to research Erik Erikson. Well, from this list of other theorists, I'd like for you to choose another theorist that's a little bit like Erikson. Maybe their theories are similar in certain ways. So you need to randomly choose that theorist, tell me how they are similar, and then tell me how they're different. So a little bit about each of their theories. And then lastly, what I want you to address is what are the beliefs of this theorist, the one that you've chosen in questions number 1 and 2. What are the beliefs of this theorist that you agree with, that you're like, yes, I completely understand that, I completely agree, and list the beliefs that you disagree with. And since you've been reading a little bit up in early childhood education, you may come across things that you're like, I just do not agree with that at all. I don't understand the importance or the developmental reason behind it. So tell me what you think in number 4. What do you agree with and what do you disagree with? Also, be sure and contact me if you have any more questions about this, because I want you to feel solid when you're developing your paper. Okay? Our question of the week. When do I have to start paying back my student loans? I know this is in the future, but it's definitely something to plan for. You have a 6-month period after you stop attending. That means after you either stop taking classes or you graduate. And of course, I'm pushing for the latter. I want you to graduate. So 6 months after you graduate, that's when they expect you to start making payments. The thing is, sometimes the payments they have set may be a little bit higher than what you expected or that you can afford right now. And in which case, I strongly suggest you looking into the income-based repayment options. There's lots of them out there, and it's available to any federal student loans. I use this as well. So what they do is you tell them how much you make a month, and then they base your payment off how much you're making. And sometimes your student loans can be as little as $50 a month. So it's always doable, and they will work with you. So 6 months, and check out the income-based repayment plan if you need to. Okay. A little bit in chapter 1, child development theories and data gathering, what we're covering this week. I like this cartoon. Not near now, dear, I'm busy. And the book is How to Raise the Perfect Child. So sometimes we need to look up and observe what's going on versus just reading it out of the book. Why do we study developmental theories? It offers an explanation of how we change in our life from the time we're born till the grave. It looks at how children grow and develop, what factors influence child growth and development, and that's where we get into the nature versus nurture debate. How we develop an understanding of child development, and how we recognize developmental delays and irregularities. So there's lots of important reasons why we study these theories. Here's one of my favorites, Maslow's hierarchy, and this one's been altered a little bit, but you may have gone through Maslow's hierarchy at some point in high school or maybe in a college class. If you look at the base here, these are our physiological needs that must be met before we can move up to that next level. So some of these basic needs are eating breakfast in the morning for a child. Do they have clean clothing? Do they have a safe place to go home to? Are they able to sleep well at night? This is where everything hinges on. So many behaviors and learning are dependent on whether or not these physiological needs are met. So that's why we really focus on these in ECE. Next, safety. Emotional and physical safety. Are there clear school and class routines? Do they feel solid with those routines? Do they have access to counselors? Do they have a nurse? Do they realize it's sometimes okay to take risk, knowing that you have people there to back you up? Next is belonging. This is where the children form relationships. Do they have someone to advise them? Do they have adult role models? Do they have friendships or a peer group at school that they feel a part of? Next is esteem. Do they have a positive classroom culture? Is their teacher accepting of children of all backgrounds? Are the other children accepting of them as well? Do they get positive feedback? Do they have time for reflection? Are they encouraged? So all of these things, physiological, safety, belonging, and esteem, must be there before a child can reach what's called self-actualization. And of course, this applies to adults as well. And at self-actualization, that's when the student is ready and available to learn. So we have to think about all these things as we go through the day with our students. Let's look real quick at 3 theorists because I want to address a little bit about each one as we go through these weeks ahead. First of all, Sigmund Freud, 1857 to 1959. So he lived almost 100 years. His main point was that experiences in early childhood influence later development and influence a child later on in life. And before this really wasn't considered. We thought, oh, children get over things. No biggie, they're growing, they'll forget. But Sigmund Freud was one of the first to really realize that no, it's a big impact. These are some of his key words, and of course you're probably pretty familiar with id, ego, and superego. Has a little bit to do with our personalities. Then we have, where was he on the nature-nurture scale? Well, he was right about there in the middle. He felt that nature, what we're born with and what our parents are, have a lot to do with how we develop, but also how we're nurtured. Next, we have Arnold Gesell, 1880 to 1961, a little bit more contemporary. His main points focus on maturation patterns, or that everything in a child develops in a predictable sequence. Even if they're slow starting that sequence, they generally move step by step. So he was a big milestone theorist. Now, where was he on nature versus nurture? He was way over here on the nature side, as far as what's your biological and genetic makeup, that this is what affects the child more than how they're nurtured. So he was a little different from Sigmund Freud. And then lastly, B.F. Skinner. He believed in the terms that we see quite a bit, reinforcement and punishment in classrooms. He believed children are conditioned by their experiences. And he lived 1904 to 1990, so he actually passed away not too long ago. Some of the key words which we've used in our assignments and on our discussion boards: operant conditioning, positive negative enforcement, punishment, behavior learning theory. So you should be pretty familiar with B.F. Skinner. On the nature-nurture scale, he was a little more on the nurture side, that the things that the child is around and how they're nurtured and parented have a big impact on who they become. Individual differences that we see in children. We know every child is unique, but why are they unique? First of all, they're unique because they have different genetic makeup. They come from different families with cultural influences that communicate in different ways. They have different health, and they have different temperament. So those are just some of the things that come into effect with our differences. How do we get variances? Well, we have three basic developmental variances. We have the typically developing child, the one that everything goes along okay, the sequences are happening as expected. We have the at-risk child, that development may be affected by maybe medical problems or possible learning problems, slight difference there. And then we have the atypically developing child, in which development does not conform to expectations, and we have major obstacles to overcome with this child. Here's one of the ways we can identify these children. We do some data gathering. Authentic assessment is one of the best ways. It's where a child is evaluated in his or her natural environment, and that mainly means at home, where they're most comfortable. Observations can be noted in several different ways. We might use anecdotal notes or a word picture of the event, a paragraph, time or event sampling, frequency and duration counts, checklists, and portfolios. And each of these are addressed in your chapter. Education is what survives when what has been learned has been forgotten. So what I want you guys to do is in your courses as we go along, I want you to learn a little bit about the theorist, learn a little bit about the curriculum, learn a little bit about the classroom, and know that you're not going to remember 100% of this, but all of these little bits of information are going to make an impact on the professional that you become after you graduate, right? And if you have any questions, guys, please contact me, text me, email, Facebook, get a hold of me, and I'd be glad to help clear the question up for you. All right, have a fantastic week.